From the Opopco Studios in Oklahoma City, this is an OSU update with Kyle Fredrickson. I'm Jenny Carlson. Kyle, now that this Cowboy football season is over, 7-5, but a lot of really positive momentum heading into the offseason. I think people are now starting to think about the offseason and think about next year, sort of big picture storylines. Quarterback seems to always be part of the storylines at OSU, and it is again this offseason, but sort of in a different way.
Yeah, could this be the first year since the Whedon era where Mike Gundy goes into a year very firmly with his #1 guy at quarterback? It would sure seem to be the case, you know, for Gundy to go into Big 12 Media Days in July and to say that anyone else but Mason Rudolph is his guy would go even beyond some of the questionable ways he's handled quarterbacks with the media in the past. So you got to think that with the way he's played these past few games, how he sparked this offense, Rudolph's going to be the guy. But behind him is where it gets interesting because you've got a couple of experienced guys who figure to be backups who have a few choices. Dax Garman, you know, he showed that he's got a lot of tools, struggled in the middle of the season when the offensive line really showed some of its inefficiencies, but this is his 5th school since his high school days. Does he want to transfer? Is he really wanting to spend his senior year at another school? If playing time is important to him, maybe that's the case, but it's hard to see that happening. And then on the other side, you've got J.W. Walsh, a guy who is beloved within the program. Mike Gundy said as much leading up to the Cactus Bowl game. But if this is a situation where he's ready to graduate in the spring, remember he was an early enrollee back in January 2011. It would put him on pace to be done with school. He could use that Russell Wilson exception going from NC State to Wisconsin if he chose to get into a graduate program at a football school where maybe they needed a quarterback. So a lot of questions there. Rudolph is the guy, but you would sure think that Mike Gundy would love it if Dax and JW stayed around because not very many times you have 2 experienced backups with a lot of, you know, game time experience, and we know with how quarterback situations work, and especially at OSU, it could be next man up.
Well, and you talk about experience, I think that sort of leads to the next offseason question, which is last year, the myriad questions of, you know, experience and who's going to play where and how's that all going to play out leadership-wise. Really, a lot of those questions are now the opposite. They've got plenty of experience all over the field.
Yeah, and just looking at the starters against Washington, there was about 8 guys who are starters who will now be gone next season from the entire team, 3 more regular contributors. So you're talking about a core of guys who, you know, while they might have gotten a little beat up this year, they had the lack of success in the middle of the season, they come back with plenty of experience, they understand the system, they really seem to gel over this bowl week and develop that chemistry. It could definitely point to a lot of good things for the Cowboys' future, and a lot of that is going to aid into some of this preseason talk about maybe where they should be ranked among other Big 12 schools, possibly behind TCU and Baylor as that 3rd team.
All right, and lastly, a question of turnover on the coaching staff is next. We've already seen Van Malone leave for SMU, so his spot is open. But is that going to create dominoes? Are we going to see other changes? Are we going to see guys move up? Are we going to see somebody new brought in? What's your best guess on coaching?
Well, it'll be interesting to see what happens from here. You know, this is a situation the Cowboys have been in recently. When Jason Jones left for Ole Miss, they had to make a few changes. Van Malone went from safeties to corners. You know, you might see a situation where Tim Duffy might transfer over. They might bring in another guy just for that cornerback spot. But as we've seen over the years, OSU assistants have been hot commodities in these coaching searches. But after a year like this, where maybe they've struggled a bit, some of those names might not be as prominent as they were in the past. Obviously, Glenn Spencer has done a fantastic job this year, considering the youth on that defense. He might be a candidate somewhere for maybe a head coaching job. But just with the way he talks about this group and just where these guys are at, I don't know if that's a strong possibility, and we really haven't heard much to say that's going to happen. But certainly, if you know they return all of these players as they're expected to, and the coaching staff for the most part comes back as a whole, it'll definitely mean good things for the future.
Well, definitely hard to see anybody besides, as you mentioned, TCU and Baylor setting up any better heading into next season in the Big 12. And be sure to stay with the best coverage team anywhere at newsok.com and every day in the Oklahoma.